Good evening, everyone. I'm Jenna, and like Mona said, I'm a therapist here at ROCK. I'd like to thank Halton Families for Families for welcoming me into this space, and I'm excited to share some pieces of information related to the topics of understanding behavior, building connection, and fostering healthy emotional development. Throughout my presentation, I'll be sharing some concepts from the Circle of Security Parenting Program. At the basis of this program is the idea that when we're able to see, understand, and respond to a child's needs in a bigger, stronger, wiser, kind way, we are able to build on that child's sense of safety and security and help build strong and meaningful relationships between a caregiver and child. Similarly, I'll be sharing the 5 steps of emotion coaching, which is part of emotion-focused family therapy. Amongst many other benefits, this approach helps caregivers to support their loved ones' emotional development, help them to become more aware of their emotions, develop self-esteem, and it also helps to support caregivers in being better able to support and cope with challenging situations. So Darlene, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So to begin with my presentation, I'll just be looking at the idea of looking beyond the behavior with you so that we can build an understanding of what behavior is and what I've selected on connection from Circle of Security to start us out. Sorry about that, everyone. It's a great video clip that I would have loved to share with you. I have compiled a list of my resources that I've used through my portion of the presentation. And like Maria Rosa mentioned, those resources will be sent out to you. And so you'll find a link for that video in the resource list, which I would really encourage you guys to check out. And again, apologies for that technical glitch. But I mean, I can speak to kind of the gist of that video with you. So yeah, essentially, when we're able to shift our lens from attention seeking to connection seeking, we're softening our focus and allowing ourselves to consider what might be going on for the child in that moment, rather than reacting solely to the behavior. In many ways, tantrums have gotten the reputation of being naughty or bad, and we can flip this and recognize that a tantrum is often a stress response that is occurring because of a child's inability to cope with the demands and expectations of the situation. More generally, we can understand that behavior signals to us that a child has a need and is requiring support. Anyone that has worked with a child or cared for a child knows that this can be very hard to understand. And so it's also important for me to note that it's not possible for us to be perfect at this or to understand and meet needs, even nearly 100% of the time. We definitely want to, promote this idea of good enough parenting and recognize that, perfection is not possible. So we can just kind of take that off the table right now. So to understand this idea of behavior as communication a little bit more, I'll share the smoke alarm analogy with you. And it's another concept that's from Circle of Security. The idea is this: when the alarm goes off, if we grab the fire extinguisher and hose off the alarm to perhaps stop it from being so loud, we've missed the flames and the house will burn down. If you go to the next slide. In this way, the difficult behavior your child may be using is their smoke alarm. If we only respond to the alarms, such as the hitting, kicking, yelling, and so on, we might miss the fire that is happening, which could be that they're frightened, they need help making sense of their big feelings, they're feeling alone and disconnected, they don't yet have the skills to manage the situation, and so on. And so the smoke alarm analogy lets us know that behavior is a way that a child communicates something to us about how they're feeling or what they need, and it actually invites us to meet that need, and it fuels connection. When we believe that a child is acting out to be disrespectful or because they're bad, it can stop our curiosity and can perhaps get in the way of us responding to the child in a way that supports the relationship and meets that underlying need. And so as part of the video, if we had been able to kind of view it all, it would have posed these 2 questions for us that I encourage you to, take away and reflect on as well. And those questions are, how can I improve my relationship with my child? and what is their behavior telling me. If you can go to the next slide, Darlene. In these slides, we have a few more examples of how we might reframe or understand behavior. And so I'll just read them through with you. Hopefully you're able to read them okay. This is from a great resource called Beacon House UK. They developed a lot of materials based on trauma-informed care and work with children, and so it can definitely be a helpful resource to check out. And so it says here, a shift from traditional language to a trauma-informed description of vulnerable individuals can create compassion instead of blame, hope instead of hopelessness, and connection rather than disconnection. And if you can go to the next one, we have a few more examples. So what we might say is attention seeking, we can understand to be attachment seeking. Likewise, when we say withdrawn, what could really be going on is that the child is feeling cautious. Rude could be self-protective. If you can go to the next one's perfect. Avoidant, we could understand that as perhaps being in flight, survival mode. Being defiant could be in fight survival mode, and they're really trying to cope with a threat. And lastly, aggressive. We could understand that as being a response of being frightened. And so, yeah, just these examples can help us to just shift that lens and again, spark a little bit of that curiosity so that we can perhaps wonder about what might be going under that behavior. Of course, it's not always easy. Caregiver emotions can run high. It can be difficult to understand what it is that the child needs. Sometimes there's competing demands that make it really hard to effectively meet the need in the moment. And so the next tool that I'll be sharing with you is from Circle of Security as well. And they've developed a worksheet on the time-in approach to help us make sense of how we can repair relationships and help navigate through these challenging moments. The concept is one that shifts the idea of a time out and is less about a specific strategy and more about a framework for relationship. And so I have, you see here an image. Of course, I'm not expecting you to read that. That's way too small. But that is a handout that, again, is included in the resource package for you. So you'll be able to find it easily on the Circle of Security website. And on the next few slides, I'll just be breaking it down a little bit more. It'll be a bit bigger, so hopefully you'll have a better chance of being able to read it. So Darlene, if you don't mind going to that next slide. And so the stages of time in, I'll review with you. Again, this is part of the Circle of Security program. It's a program that we do run at ROCK. Like Mona mentioned, I'm one of the facilitators for it. So certainly it's this the tip of the iceberg that I'm able to share with you this evening. But if you're interested in learning more, I definitely encourage you to check out the resources on the Circle of Security website. And as well, we do run the group, both a kind of workshop version, which is 4 sessions, and a longer group program. So if you're interested in that, you're welcome to certainly reach out. So repairing relationships with a time in. It starts by saying that this is a guideline. And of course, it's harder than this page will make it sound. Very important to keep in mind. So I'm upset and my child is upset. So when necessary, I start with a timeout for me, for my child, or for both of us until I get back on the circle by realizing that I'm bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. And reminding myself that no matter what or how I feel, my child needs me. And so with this approach, they're really suggesting that we shift the idea of a time out to a time in. They're suggesting that there's space for a timeout in terms of, taking a break, You know, for parents to take a breather. Sometimes a little bit of time can help to kind of regulate yourself, for your child to regulate. And then it suggests that, okay, that's not, you know, entirely what we should be doing, just time out on itself. That could just be the first step. There's these other steps that we want to follow to make sure that we're really able to support the child through that situation, and also repair that relationship. So again, trying to fuel that connection. So this next slide is kind of the second point. And again, you'll see it more in sequence when you have it on the full handout. But this one speaks to, I'm calm enough and my child is upset. And so we can build a safe repair routine together, remembering it takes lots and lots and lots and lots of times to be able to sometimes get comfort to find the groove, and to kind of be able to support each other through these moments. So I take charge so my child is not too out of control. Go to a neutral place. That is our time and spot where we sit together and let feelings begin to change. I maintain a calm tone of voice that's firm, reassuring, and kind. We can do something different for several minutes, read, look out the window. I can help my child bring words to their feelings. It looks like this is hard for you. Are you feeling mad, sad, angry? I can talk about my feelings about what happened. So when you did that, I felt so and so. So if you're familiar with I statements, that might be a good practice of them here. I stay with my child until they're calm enough. It may take a while for a child to calm down from overwhelming and unorganized feelings. And they gave this rule of thumb, which is stay in charge and stay sympathetic. And then we'll move into this kind of third phase of this time and approach. And that is, I am calm enough and my child is calm enough. So I can use the following to support our repair and to make repair easier in the future. I help my child use words for the needs and feelings that they're struggling with by listening and talking together. And so they've created this helpful kind of acronym for us to keep in the back of our minds, which is KISS. So keep it short and sweet. You know, going on, or you know, sometimes too many questions or too much content that's being shared can be overwhelming. I help my child to take responsibility for their part, and I take responsibility for my part. Rule of thumb is no blaming allowed. We can talk about new ways of dealing with the problem in the future. Even for very young children, talking out loud about new options will establish a pattern and a feeling that can be repeated through the years. So again, this is where it's less about necessarily a strategy and more about kind of a way of being that really promotes this relationship and really encourages children to be able to know and feel that, okay, when I have a problem, when I have a big emotion, when there's something going on, you know, I can feel able to go to my caregiver, and they're going to help me organize kind of some of this and respond to me and validate me and kind of help me through it. And this last portion of the time in approach is just a blurb that I'll share with you, and it goes like this. Bottom line, it's the relationship and only the relationship that will build the child's capacity to organize their feelings. My child's problem may look like something that's being done on purpose, but at its root, it's an issue of needing to reconnect and learning to handle difficult feelings in a safe and secure way. By taking an I can, we can perspective, together we are going to figure out what you need. My child will realize that I'm in charge as someone who is bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. This will reassure them that their feelings will settle and organize, and the relationship will be repaired. Of course, as I've mentioned, sometimes this can be really, really hard to do. Sometimes our own dysregulation and our feelings, thoughts, worries can come up especially in those challenging moments with your child. And so, I bring this information with you to share with you, and hoping that, you can be kind and curious to yourselves. If you're finding that, there continues to be some challenges coming up, that you're kind of ready and wanting to kind of work through, to talk about, it may be helpful to approach a trusted partner or friend or therapist around your experience and what your needs are. Because we know that when your needs are being met and you're feeling safe and regulated, you're better able to connect with and meet the needs of your child. The last part of my presentation this evening, we'll be looking at using emotion coaching, which some of you may be familiar with. It's part of emotion-focused family therapy, and so I'll be using some of the information that is shared by Dr. Adele LaFrance today, and she's one of the developers of this model. You can go ahead to the next slide. So here we have the 5 steps of emotion coaching, which I will kind of go through with you as well. Of course, it's a lot of information to capture on these slides. So you'll see that I've included a link here at the bottom of this slide, and again in the resource package. So certainly if this resonates with you and you're looking to learn more, please follow that link and you'll find a lot more information about emotion coaching. So step 1 we have here is attend to the emotion. This can look like approaching the child calmly. We also want to be aware of our own emotions. We might not know for sure what emotion the child is experiencing, and the child might be cueing us subtly, or on the other hand, it might be glaringly obvious what it is that they're experiencing. And so we might simply say, I can tell that something is bothering you, or I can see that you're having a hard time right now. Step 2, what's referred to as essentially helps us to put the emotion into words. We might be curious about what they're experiencing and wonder if they're feeling sad or disappointed. We can help them to identify what word they would use to describe their feeling, and perhaps how they might be experiencing physical responses along with that emotion. For example, feeling really hot and restless when they're angry. We might say, you look sad. How would you describe what you're feeling right now? I see that you're clenching your fists. We're just kind of helping to exactly name and, put it on the table what's going on. Step 3 has us validate the emotion, which is something that is so critically important and yet can be really challenging for us to do. In order to validate someone's emotions, we have to reach into ourselves and connect with that feeling. You might say that we're trying to put ourselves in another person's shoes, something that might feel at odds with your own experience if you understand perhaps a different perspective of the situation. Validation, empathy, and sitting in the yuck with another person's feelings can be hard. And so it can be difficult to not give the situation a silver lining or push the person to be okay. We have to accept that the emotions are perhaps different than what we expected or what we can perhaps understand, and that the person has their own unique experience. When we acknowledge and validate the emotion, we're able to demonstrate that we understand and are able to help hold the feeling. And this helps to strengthen the relationship, create emotional safety, and invite them to come back when things are hard. In this step, Adele LaFrance encourages us to speak the unspoken, which she says looks like speaking the truth that you both know, but that neither of you want to say out loud. This can help to create space to truly acknowledge the other person's experience and let them know that it's okay to talk about. We might say, I understand that you're sad. It feels really disappointing when the event you were looking forward to was canceled. And we've had a lot of that going on recently. Another tip for validation that Dr. LaFrance shares is this: try to transform the but to because. And I find this really helpful to kind of work through some of these moments as well. So she suggests that when your loved one tells you that they feel sad about missing out on an event, rather than leading with the typical response like, I can understand why you might feel sad, but there's always next time. Again, oftentimes that's really well intentioned because we're trying to help support that person in feeling better. In this kind of emotion coaching way, we would try and step into that person's shoes and understand why they might be feeling the way that they are. And then we can kind of communicate an understanding using the word because. So that could look like, I understand why you would feel sad because you know you're going to miss out on the fun and you've really been looking forward to this. So again, we're just sitting in that and we're just validating it for a moment without pushing too quickly into what ends up being part of the problem solve and meet that need. Again, this is a lot of information, and it's hard. I want, as we're talking about validation, I want to validate that for you as well, that this can be really challenging. Step 4 looks at meeting the need, which may look different based on the situation, the emotion. For example, sadness could call for soothing, perhaps being held or sharing a hug, or perhaps your child likes cuddling with a special stuffed animal. Anger looks like helping to set and hold boundaries and limits. And anxiety looks at helping to confront the child's worry with support and care, and so on. And lastly, we have step 5, which may more or less be based on what the previous steps have looked like. Oftentimes by now, the intensity of the situation has reduced and some problem solving may have organically been happening. I think the main point with this one is just when we arrive, before arriving at the step, we really want to make sure that we've already worked to attend, validate, and label the emotion. We can't just jump ahead. And so to conclude this presentation, it's been a lot of information. So again, please access those resources so that you can, continue to bring this learning outside of this evening's event. But I wanted to leave you with these lovely words that Adele LaFrance and Ashley Miller write in their book, What to Say to Kids When Nothing Seems to Work. So when it feels like you've tried everything and nothing seems to work, it's easy to lose hope. It can make you worry that something is really wrong with your child, yourself, or your relationship. Rest assured that change can take time. Children are incredibly resilient creatures, and so are parents and caregivers. We are programmed to learn and grow together. No matter what your child has been through or how she is reacting right now, there is always, always hope. The bond between a child and their primary caregiver is stronger than it seems, and children want things to get better. Your child likely won't yet be able to thank you for all that you're doing or to tell you that even when things go sideways, he appreciates how you stick by him again and again. We hope that in the meantime that you give yourself credit for being willing to try out new things, fall, and get back up again. It's a tremendous gift you are giving yourself and your child, and we so firmly believe that your efforts are incredibly meaningful. And so I hope that can resonate with you this evening, and thank you so much.
Hi everybody, I'm Leanne and I'm a behavior therapist at ROCK. So I just wanted to kind of come here today to give you a little bit of an introduction about what ABA is and how at ROCK we use it to support the families. So just kind of briefly, ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. So ABA is a type of therapy based on the science of learning and behavior. And there's kind of these 3 main parts of ABA. that kind of like the foundation pieces. And the first one is that ABA is an evidence-based therapy, which means there's lots and lots of research being done to kind of promote the strategies. The second part is we're data-driven. So when we do interventions, we always rely on the data before we decide to kind of come up with a plan. And the last part is function focused. And probably the most important part for us is we always want to know the function or the why the behavior is occurring before we decide to move forward. So you've probably heard about ABA kind of if you're part of the autism community, because ABA is considered the gold standard of treatment for individuals with autism. And in Ontario, we have the Ontario Autism Program, which provides funding for children with an ASD diagnosis to receive ABA. Darlene, if you can go ahead. So it is very true that ABA is used a lot for children who have an ASD diagnosis, but ABA is actually just a learning style, and it can be used across really a very wide variety of diagnosis. It can be used for lots of different behavior and lots of different needs. So ABA is actually used in tons of different environments. It could be used by the government to help people recycle better. It could be used in the gym to help people kind of meet their fitness goals. It's used in schools and, you know, eating disorder clinics. It basically can cover kind of any range of different things. And the main part really is that when we look at ABA, we want to make sure that we're producing meaningful and socially significant changes in behavior. And when I call a family to kind of ask them what their goals may be, I often ask them, what is it that you want to increase? So again, we're wanting to look at increasing functional behavior. So we do a lot of skill building. And the other piece that we ask usually is, what do we want to decrease? So what kind of areas are really challenging in your life, and what are the areas we can kind of focus on? Yeah, so we look at challenges with behavior as occurring for kind of two different main reasons. And the first reason is we look at it as if there is a skill deficit. So in other words, that person doesn't know how to do that skill yet. That isn't something that they have learned to do. And the second piece is maybe that person has learned that some sort of inappropriate or, you know, a challenging behavior has been successful in meeting a need for them, so they continue to do it. So back to this whole function piece, which is, like I said, one of the most important parts, and that's we use the data to kind of come up with our guess or our hypothesis about the function. And function really means the why. So why is this behavior occurring? And again, we're looking at behavior as something as what is this person trying to communicate with their behavior? There is a reason for it. There's a purpose for this. We kind of look at behavior as having a couple of different functions. And so the first function is we look at behavior as a way to gain access to something. So that could be, you know, gaining access to attention. It could be gaining access to an activity, tangibles, edibles. You know, I want to eat food, so I cook dinner, sort of thing. Another function is to escape or avoid something. So again, you know, I don't want to go to the dentist, so I'm just going to not make an appointment, right? So again, we look at it as, you know, something that we probably don't want to do, so we would rather not have it happen. And then the last function that we look at is what we call sensory or automatic. And everybody does these things. Sometimes we think about them a little bit with more kind of pertaining to children with autism because of the self-stimulatory behavior. But sensory just means that you are going to either gain or avoid something that you want. So for example, you have an itch and you scratch it. We would look at that as a sensory function of behavior. Go ahead. Okay, so once we figure out the function or what we think is happening and the why the behavior is occurring, we will come up with a plan or an intervention. And when we write an intervention, we should always have the ABCs as part of our plan. So I just wanted to quickly run through what those mean, and then I'll get into them very briefly about how we might make them work. So when we're talking about the ABCs, we're talking about A's meaning antecedent strategies. And for us, that really means preventative strategies. So what can we do ahead of time to kind of make that behavior not occur? The second piece is replacement behavior and skill strategies. So thinking back to the fact that your child may not have those skills yet, we want to teach them those skills, or we might want to teach them an alternative to the behavior that still serves the same purpose for them. So we could be teaching them kind of an appropriate or maybe a better way for that person to have their needs met. And then the last part is C, and we call that consequence-based strategies. And for us, really, as behavior therapists, we're really talking about reinforcement. And the reason why is because we believe that, or we know that if someone is reinforced for something, they're much more likely for that to occur again. So we want to look at reinforcing all of those skills that we're building and all of the stuff that we want to see. So the first one, antecedent strategies, and we'll get into that a little bit because this is something that I actually probably focus on most with parents when I'm first starting to work with a family. It's very often that we respond to behavior after it occurs, but actually what happens before the behavior is really important too. And there's lots of things that we can do from an antecedent perspective to kind of change that behavior or make that behavior not occur. So different types of antecedent strategies we use is changes to the environment. That might be something like, setting out clothes the night before you go to bed so that it's not so hard to pick them out in the morning. We have consistent routines, and I know we've all been hearing about this through this whole quarantine thing about how important it is for us to have routines, but it does make a big difference if people know what to expect in their day. Effective communication, so again, looking at how we're communicating, how we're kind of asking for things. And the last one that we do is redirection. And redirection for us really means looking at and getting to know our children so that we can start to see when behavior is starting to escalate, and we learn how to respond or intervene at a much earlier time so that we don't have kind of those big explosions. So onto the kind of replacement behavior and skill building piece. So we always believe that behavior happens for a reason. It has a function, it has a purpose. There's a reason this behavior is occurring. And we really want to look at making sure that we're teaching replacement behavior. So we want to do that skill building piece. And again, the most important part here is that we want the behavior, the new skills, to have the same function as a challenging behavior. So, the example here, asking for attention instead of hitting, right? So perhaps we might have a child who's nonverbal and might come up and hit somebody to get their attention. And we would really want to look at what other skills can we teach this child so that they don't have to get attention that way. They could perhaps, come up and touch the person's hand or tap them or things like that. And that will be just as valuable as doing things the other way. And we believe that if we don't teach replacement behavior, that problem behavior might not get better, and we might see an increase of other behavior as well. And then the last part, the C's, the consequence-based strategies. And again, we're really talking about reinforcement here from our perspective. So consequence-based strategies are carefully planned strategies that are used after the behavior occurs. So this is something we're going to plan ahead. We know we're going to do these things. Again, talking about reinforcement, something that we know is going to increase the likelihood that behavior is going to happen again. And then just an important part to notice about reinforcers is that it has to be something that's motivating for that individual. That's a kind of an area that some people fall into without realizing that that thing that we're kind of offering or giving to the child may not be motivating for him. So it has to be something that they like and are willing to work for. So I just wanted to give you a couple of, when I do some of the consults or booked walk-ins at ROCK, sometimes I have parents call in and talk about, you know, specific things that are happening to them and how we would look at things from kind of an ABA perspective. So I just gave the example of morning routines, you know, something that is typically hard. And, you know, if a family were to call and say that they're having a really challenging time in the morning, things aren't going well, we're late every day, everybody's kind of in chaos, I would sit down and kind of look at, you know, the specific behavior stuff that's happening, but also look at the ABCs. What can we do from those, you know, pieces to make this go better? So again, looking at the antecedent strategies, if we're talking about a morning routine, we might look at, you know, how do we change the environment? So can we, you know, use a timer? And there's that morning schedule and that morning routine, right? If we have something like that, this could just be the one thing that we need to make it go smoother. Yeah, and I think I already gave that example of, you know, maybe we set out the clothes the night before, so we're not trying to find those socks, or we're arguing about what's clean and what's dirty, packing lunch, all of those things, right? Providing choices, also an antecedent strategy. So, you know, things aren't going well, your child doesn't want to wear those shoes. Well, is there another option? So you can wear these shoes or these shoes today. And then the second part is looking at, okay, are there some skill areas that we need to work on? Perhaps your child doesn't have the skills to be independent yet in the morning, and we want to start teaching them a little bit more independence so that it does go better, right? So, you know, maybe we teach them outside of this how to brush their teeth without our help so that they can do that part alone. And then the last part, of course, is reinforcing the desired behavior because we want to see more of it. So I think as humans, sometimes we don't always remember to reinforce all the good stuff, right? It's just like, oh, he can do that. He's supposed to do that, right? And for us, we really want to make sure that we're reinforcing all those things that we want to see more often. And I think I have just one more example. Yeah, so homework is another one I thought might come up, especially with back to school. You know, it's challenging, and we could be having a really hard time getting through homework. So if I'm looking at things from, again, an ABA perspective, and I want to say, okay, what can we look at from the antecedent standpoint? What can we change to make homework go better? Can we make, you know, break down the work a little bit so it's not overwhelming? Can we offer choices like maybe we'll start with reading rather than math? Maybe we need to look at just even doing less work or easier work for now, and then build up to asking more later. And then the second part, the replacement behavior, the skill building, again, you know, maybe your child doesn't really know how to ask for help. Maybe they're just kind of getting upset and breaking down and not sharing with us that they don't know what to do, right? So maybe we teach them that asking for help is something that can be helpful for them. And then, of course, the last part about reinforcing the work, and, you know, and you can kind of put the breaks and reinforcement together in these pieces, but making sure, again, that your child is getting that positive feedback for all the stuff that they're doing well. So that was kind of everything that I had to say about ABA in a brief nutshell, just to give you guys a little bit of an intro. And if you have more questions, please feel free to ask. And also just wanted to let you know that if you did want to speak to a behavior therapist, we are available when you call the access line.
My part of the presentation is really going to be looking at more the global side of social connection and the importance of social connection with our kids. So as we know, social connections are essential to all of us. They're actually part of our survival. As a species, we require social connection. It's essential. It's as essential as the need for food or for shelter. Dr. Matthew Lieberman from UCLA, he's a neuroscientist, and he was known to say being socially connected is our brain's lifelong passion. And he also said that the evolution has shown that the best way to make us more successful is to make us more social. So just think, by interacting with others socially, we stay protected, we exchange ideas, we reflect on problems, and we find solutions together. We become creative, and as a result, we're able to move society forward. In 2010, there was a review of 148 studies that was able to show that individuals with stronger social relationships actually live longer. Up to 50% actually have a higher likelihood of living longer. Human beings are social creatures, and by being connected within a social group, there's an increased sense of belonging. We feel like we're understood by others. We have an increased level of happiness with increased feelings of self-worth. And social groups help us develop our own identity, and it helps us learn some of the skills that are needed to live in society. So it's clear that creating connections with our kids is extremely important for all these reasons. Darlene, if you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. So I've had the delight of running active parenting workshops for Halton Families for Families with Maria Rosa, who is our fantastic workshop coordinator. And together, one of the first things we do during our workshop is actually talk about the role of the parent within a family structure. On to the next slide, Darlene, please. So together, as parents, we come up with a general role, or I guess a general responsibility, which is to protect and prepare children and teens to survive and thrive in the kind of society in which they live. So the society we live in is one that's based on a system that is like a modern society, a modern social equality in which every family member is important and is worthy of respect. And that's consistent with a democratic society. So parents are the leaders of their family, and the children are the learners, the participants. Throughout every session of our workshop, the common thread is that being an active parent is doing it through connection. Connecting with our kids is the only way to be a successful parent. So a child that's strongly connected with their parent wants to cooperate, wants to he wants to say, he wants to do what he can. If they have the skills to cooperate, when they trust us to understand, to see things as they do, they're more likely to follow what we ask of them. So some researchers say that we need 5 positive interactions for every negative interaction. What I mean by negative interaction would include reminding or correcting. So what this means is that we as parents should be spending about 5 times as much time in positive connection. That means playing a game, reading a book together, chatting. So when a parent is needing to remind their child to do a chore or that they need to do, the child should have already been filled with 5 times more positive interaction. And that's a lot of connecting. So what happens when we connect with our kids? Well, we help our children learn and develop the characters that are on the screen right now. They're the essential characters to becoming strong citizens in today's society. There are many qualities of characters that are important for being future citizens, and these qualities are the foundation of how qualities are formed. So in our active parenting workshop, these are the 5 key characters we mentioned. And I'm going to go through them really, really quickly. Respect, the first one on there. Mutual respect is the cornerstone of life. When we treat each other respectfully, we expect others to treat us in the same way. And it allows for individuals to share ideas freely and it actually to solve problems together. Responsibility is an important part of parenting since it helps a child know their obligations. They get to understand what is right, what is wrong. They understand that they need to accept consequences of their decisions if they don't take on their responsibilities. Cooperation, learning to cooperate begins within the family. So knowing how to problem solve and how to plan and to do it as a team, that's what propels a society forward. Courage. Individuals who have the courage to take worthwhile risks have the best chance to thrive. And when life becomes challenging, those who have the courage to persevere are more likely to succeed. Self-esteem, children who believe they are worthwhile human beings with talents and dreams that are worthy of respect have the best chance to thrive. And high self-esteem helps develop the other character traits. So I'm going to mention this again. The best way for us to help our kids to develop these 5 characters is actually to do it through connection. So Darlene, if you want to switch over to the next slide. There we go. So I'm going to focus on one of those characters, which is building courage. So very important. It takes courage to hold out for all the other values, to hang in there. Keep working when self-doubt grips the heart. When a child lacks courage, this child becomes discouraged. So when a child experiences failure, this child can start beating himself up with his own negative perceptions. He has lost heart. Courage comes from the French word cœur, which is right there on the screen. Long been considered at the center of human emotion. It's at the core of a person's character. Courage is also linked to fear. So that's evident when I ask myself, do I go ahead or do I turn back? What if I fail? What will happen? What if they reject me? All these choices, all these questions, all these paths, they require a choice. And so it's a choice to risk dealing with the consequences of the choice. So where does this courage come from? It comes from a belief in himself or herself, the belief that regardless of the outcome, he or she is lovable, a capable human being. This belief is what we call self-esteem, and it helps the child motivate him or herself to work hard. It gives him or her the confidence. When self-confidence is high, the child has the courage to face challenges. And when we believe we are unlovable or not capable, our self-esteem drops. So our low self-esteem produces discouragement and fear. So onto this slide. It may not seem like it, but parents have a huge effect on their kids by what they say and what they do. When connecting, here are some of the ways we tend to discourage our children. And the first is focusing on mistakes. If everything a parent says are things the child has forgotten to do, this becomes their only type of connection with their parent. This can lead to negative self-talk for the child. Instead, find something you like or something you've observed to be positive about your kid, about your child. That's to say, build on their strengths. I really appreciate when you helped me bring in the groceries earlier today. That was so helpful. Another thing is expecting too little. Instead, give them responsibility or ask them for their opinion or their advice. Another is expecting them to be perfect. Instead, accept them for who they are, unconditionally. Another thing is overprotecting or pampering. If you're not ready to write the test yet, I'll write you a note. Instead, allow your child to fail, to experience things, to be independent, so that your child becomes independent from you as he or she gets older. On to the next slide. So the way we develop all these abilities and characters is by connecting through experiences, and it's crucial to do this with our kids as they're developing in childhood. On to the next one. The next slide. Thanks, Darlene. So why it's crucial to think of connecting with our kids while they are developing. Science has uncovered that our children's brains are undergoing substantial growth in their bodies, including their brains. Babies are born with nearly all their brain cells. However, many of their connections are formed by experience. And so these neural connections are needed in childhood in order to control behavior, reason things out, use their imagination. These neural connections mature well into their 20s or even towards the late 20s for boys. There's a rapid and intense period of brain growth between 11 and 14 years of age, and this is the largest brain growth observed since infancy, since they're babies. It's followed by a period of pruning, and brain connections are made and become coated by a little substance called myelin, which makes the connection stronger and the connection move faster throughout the brain. So those connections that are not made are pruned and lost. So the brain develops from the back to the front, from the cerebellum, all the way through to the limbic area, the central part of the brain, and to the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive center of the brain. So Darlene, you can go to the next slide. The executive center of the brain is associated with maturity and adulthood, and it's crucial that we expose and guide our kids to experience things that allow them to develop the neural connections that they need, those positive neural connections that are going to help them thrive. So these experiences are done by connecting with our children. It's also important to realize that many of these skills, they're still in development. So it's important to notice that it's normal for your child to have difficulties with emotion regulation and impulse control, because these things are the last things that are going to be developing in the brain. So we need to be understanding, we need to be firm, we need to be caring as these behaviors appear. So the next slide, Darlene, in July, I was involved in running a workshop on screen addiction with Dr. Victoria Crichton. She works at an addictions treatment center, and we discussed at length of the clinical and the neurological dangers of excessive screen use. And we discussed how we now live in a highly tech-centered society, and especially with the impact of COVID-19, we're using our technology so much more to connect and to work and to go to school. So what's lacking now is the face-to-face connection. So especially with our children that are developing, we need to just make sure that they have a balanced use of technology and that we have some quality connections with them, especially in the family and with their friends, if that's possible. The next slide. So what I propose is to find creative ways of having fun, ways to connect with our kids. Start by making relationships, do face-to-face connections, make it a priority. Set aside some quality time for your family without any distractions of a TV, a phone, the iPad. This sends a message that family is important and it takes precedence over everything else. Do simple things together like playing games, eating meals, cooking, singing songs. This develops that deep bond that we need to have amongst our family members. It also lets kids know, lets children lead the way in coming up with some fun family activities to make them feel special and responsible to organize face-to-face connection. Celebrate those little moments. So yes, we do celebrate birthdays, but I propose celebrating the day-to-day stuff that we can observe and sometimes you sort of put aside. So as you see siblings, your son, daughter playing together and they're sharing toys, acknowledge that. When they follow routines, when they're speaking courteously, or when they show good manners, maybe just highlight that, celebrate that with them. Shower affection. Physical demonstration of love and affection is crucial. And so be generous in giving hugs and kisses. If you're comfortable doing that, give them high fives, an encouraging wink, a pat on the back, thumbs up, fist bumps. Confirm that you care, which may help augment that closeness and that trust in your relationship. Communicate effectively. Every family member has a say in family matters. Members need to feel that they're supported and they're understood. So talking openly, listening, speaking with respect, minding the tone, being considerate while sharing information can become the basis of that positive communication. Do family meetings. We talk a lot about that during our active parenting workshops. Acknowledge feelings. So being thoughtful, we've talked about that in the previous presentation. Parents need to set the example and display the importance of harmonious, being thoughtful of every member's feelings and tuning into their behavior sort of enables that caring relationship that we need to have. Allow them time to express their needs, their frustrations, and listen to those feelings. Model behavior. Parents need to set examples and display that importance of a harmonious family relationship by their actions and their behavior. Work as a team. Families should discuss every individual's concerns and work together to find solutions. These are skill building opportunities when we're in families. So even while you're planning outings or a fun activity, family discussions ought to be the way to do it. So you discussing things can help a family emerge with creative solutions. Families also learn, members of the family also learn about respecting everybody else's point of view. And as we work collectively as a team, it produces a feeling of belonging and that importance, thereby strengthening that family bond within the unit. And the last point there is extending unconditional support. And we've talked about that earlier. So being supportive of all family members, it just creates that togetherness. When a family adopts that caring approach and avoids the tendency to blame and find faults with each other, that becomes more helpful. So different members can have varying needs, which may cause stress and some struggle, but in those moments, if we can provide them with support, comfort, love, checking in regularly, sharing their worries, offering whatever support possible can prove beneficial in fortifying your relationships within the unit. So connecting with each other can be rewarding through commitment, purposeful investment, It's essential for our own very survival as a human being. Feeling socially connected, especially in an increasingly isolated world, it's so important, and much more important now than ever. And it's as important for us as parents as it is for our kids. So that sort of tailors off my part of the presentation. I did add in actually some additional resources, and this Netflix documentary called Social Dilemma was really interesting if anybody wants to watch it. I don't know if it's fairly new. It's new to me, really talking about the impact of social media and some of the programming that's sort of looped into social media. Very interesting documentary. Also, if you go onto the Halton Families for Families website, there is the screen addiction workshop that I did with Dr. Victoria Crichton. So if you're concerned about screen addiction for your kids, this could be useful information for you. And of course, the last thing, I'll just a pitch for active parenting workshops. I know we're hoping to be able to try and do active parenting workshop on Zoom. So just the pitch out there if ever you want to register for that. I know at one point Maria Rosa and I will probably lead that workshop again in the near future. So that's it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I pass it back to Maria Rosa and Mona.
Thank you very much. I'm just waiting for my video to come back on, and always so insightful, I have to say. I really appreciate all of the information. I'm just going to give people a few minutes to gather their thoughts. There's a lot of information that was thrown your way, and if you have any ideas or stories you'd like to share, or comments or questions for any of the presenters, or just in general, this would be a good time to send them. We haven't received anything as yet, just so the presenters are aware. So yeah, if you want to take a few seconds and just kind of gather your thoughts and send anything my way, that would be great. So we have a person that commented that this was amazing. Thank you so much. It was very well presented, great information that was shared. And thank you so much. So kudos to our presenters for putting together so much information in such a short period of time. So we just, that was a big thank you to you.
Yeah, you know, if there's nothing else, and there's still time if anybody has anything else that they want to say, but a big thank you to everybody for joining us tonight as well. And our presenters, Jenna, Leanne, and Christine, you guys, it was so insightful and very eye-opening. I mean, I can speak for myself. I hope that everyone else felt the same way. Just a few things in terms of, we will be, I know we said this before, but we will be posting the presentation and the workshop on the website, Halton Families for Families. A little bit of business things. Your opinion is very important to us as we try to provide you with the best workshop experience. So I think Maria Rosa has posted a survey in the chat box as well. So if we can ask for you guys to fill in the survey before you leave us, that would be great. And we ask that you stay tuned as we present more informative workshops to come. Our next event is our Facebook Live event presented by Our Space, which is on Thursday, September the 24th. And our next workshop is actually presented by the Positive Space Network, and it's called Born This Way. And it's helpful in supporting the 2S LGBTQ+ community of families, and that'll be on Thursday, October the 1st. So please feel free to register for these events on our website. Yeah, and I think that's it, unless anybody else has any questions or comments or anything else that they'd like to post in the chat.
Just another comment from one of our participants, thanking you for all the info, and hoping that we will be sharing the presentation with them. So yes, we absolutely will. There was also a question about the video that we were having some technical difficulties with. Yes, that will also be posted on the website for you to view at your leisure. As well, as we've mentioned, this is being recorded, so you can always refer back if there's a segment that you found interesting or perhaps just wanted to listen to over. We'll have this up and running in the next few days for you. I'll be communicating with you all via email, so you have not heard the last of me. And of course, I will be sending the survey link as well. I'm not sure if any of you had a chance to select it through chat, but we do value what you think. It helps us structure these workshops and deliver what you find helpful. So if you have a moment, please fill that out so that we stay on track. So I guess there hasn't been anything that's come through. So without further ado, I'd like to send a very special thank you out to Mona for co-facilitating as our volunteer, our presentress, of course. And in the background, there's Darlene, who has been doing a wonderful job at providing all of the technical stuff. It takes a village, you know, to run some of these workshops, and this was one of those that definitely took a village. So I'm grateful for that, because without all of you, including our participants, our workshops really are for naught. So on that, I would like to wish you all a good night, and please disconnect at your leisure. And we hope to see you all soon, or rather Zoom with you all soon. And yes, have a good rest of the week, everyone.